My name is Harper Lane, and the night my family declared me dead is a night I can still smell in the air. Rain mixed with cold Tennessee soil, the sharp sting of my father's whiskey on his breath, the faint crackle of the fireplace behind him. I was 19 years old when Richard Lane looked me in the eye and spoke the sentence that would bury me for the next 8 years. From tonight forward, Harper Lane is dead to this family. People think those words are metaphorical until they feel the floor drop out from beneath them, until they look around a dinner table and realize every person they once loved is nodding along. But I remember something else too. The moment before he spoke, the split second, where I still believed someone in that room might stand up for me. That is the part that still hurts. Let me tell you how it started. Earlier that evening, I had sat them all down and told them what I had been planning for months. I was dropping out of Vanderbilt. I was moving to Austin. I was building a tech startup with nothing but a draft of an idea and a second-hand laptop. I knew it would land like a grenade. I did not know it would turn my entire bloodline against me. My father shot up from his chair so hard it slammed into the wall. My mother, Clara, pressed her napkin to her lips like she was hiding a sin. My younger brother Logan let out a dry laugh and said, "Good. One less person hogging the bathroom every morning." Aunt Marjorie, the unofficial lieutenant of the family business, folded her arms and delivered the final blow. Do not come crawling back when this fantasy explodes. But I still believed someone would stop it. Someone would say, Harper is still family. Calm down. She is 19. She is allowed to dream. No one did. The rain hammered the windows behind us like it was trying to warn me to run. Maybe I should have. But I stood there, frozen, coat half on, eyes burning, waiting for a sign of compassion. One sign, a word, a hand reaching for mine. Nothing. That was the night I learned something people do not say out loud. Family can choose to stop loving you at any moment. And here is the hook I want you to remember. The truth that will matter for everything that comes next. When a family decides you are dead, and you survive anyway, you become someone they never expect, someone they cannot control, someone they should fear. I did not know this yet. All I knew was that my throat hurt too much to speak and my chest felt hollow. I turned toward the door, ready to walk out into the storm, when I felt a soft tug on my sleeve. Grandma June, the only person at that table with a soul left, pulled me into the hallway. Her hands were warm, even though the house felt cold. "Baby," she whispered, "go make them eat every word they just said." She pressed 5 crisp bills into my palm. $500, more money than I had ever seen her carry in cash. Then, she slipped a folded note into my coat pocket. Her handwriting always leaned to the left, careful and steady. "This has my number. You call me if you need anything." Her eyes glistened, but she refused to cry. "You are not dead to me, remember that." And then she let go. When I stepped outside, the rain hit me like a baptism and a burial at the same time. My suitcase thumped against each stair. Behind me, the door shut with the soft, final click of a coffin lid. I stood on the walkway of the Lane estate, drenched in stormwater and humiliation, staring at the home that had raised me and erased me in one breath. I walked to the bus stop at the end of the street, dragging my suitcase through puddles, feeling the cold soak through my socks. My phone buzzed only once that night, the moment I crossed out of the neighborhood. A single text from my father. "Do not contact us again." I deleted the message before the screen dimmed. People ask me why I did not fight harder to stay, why I let them push me out so easily. They never understand that I was not pushed, I was exiled. There is a difference. And here is where the real story begins. The part that will make you lean in just a little closer. When I walked away that night, I did not know that 8 years later, those same people would beg me to save them. I did not know I would return not with apologies or longing, but with the one thing they feared most: power. But for now, I was just a 19-year-old girl standing in a rain-soaked street, gripping $500 and the last piece of family that still believed in me. And this is the story of how the night they killed me became the night I started living. When the Greyhound bus pulled away from Nashville at 2:17 a.m., I watched the city lights smear across the window like melting gold. I had a backpack, a half-soaked suitcase, $500, and the fading warmth of Grandma June's last hug. Everything else, family, home, safety, belonging, had been stripped from me in a single dinner. I didn't cry on that bus. I thought I would, but my body felt too empty for tears, like grief needed a place to land, and found nothing inside me sturdy enough to hold it. I told myself I wasn't running away, I was simply leaving the place that had already buried me. Austin greeted me with heat, dust, and the kind of silence that makes you realize just how alone you are. I stepped off the bus onto cracked cement, lugging my suitcase like a wounded limb. I sat on a bench outside the station, staring at the sun rising over a city that did not know my name, and did not care to learn it. People imagine beginnings are beautiful. Fresh starts, open doors. Mine smelled like sweat, exhaust fumes, and the stale scent of fear. The first month nearly broke me. I slept on the floor of a studio apartment shared by 3 college students I barely knew. Rent was $60 a week for my corner of the carpet. I hid my suitcase behind a curtain because there were no closets. At night, I listened to the ceiling fan rattle like it was struggling to hold itself together, and I wondered if I was supposed to be doing the same. Eventually I found work, multiple jobs, because one paycheck wasn't enough to keep me upright. Morning shift at a bakery, where I served people bread I couldn't afford. Afternoon shifts delivering food on a borrowed bike. Nighttime cleaning offices, where polished floors reflected futures that weren't meant for girls like me. Some nights I slept in the apartment, some nights, when the guys had friends over, and there was no space left to breathe, I slept in a 24-hour laundromat with my suitcase wedged against my legs, so no one could steal it. I learned quickly that survival isn't noble. It is relentless, humiliating, and sharp around the edges. And through it all, my family never called. Not once. It was as if the moment I stepped off their property, I vanished from their memories entirely. No birthday messages, no check-ins, no late-night texts asking if I was still alive, except from Grandma June. Once a month, she called from a prepaid flip phone, voice soft and hushed, like she was speaking from a place she wasn't allowed to exist. She always asked 2 questions. Are you safe? And, are you still believing in yourself? I lied to her for the first 3 months. I told her yes to both. The truth was messier. Safety was a luxury. Belief was a flickering candle I kept shielding with shaking hands. But here is the hook you need to hear. The sentence that became the spine of the next 8 years of my life. No one becomes powerful by accident. It only happens when the people who were supposed to love you choose to abandon you instead. Pain is not the opposite of strength. Pain is the ignition. Around month 4, I landed a part-time job at a local startup hub. My job was to wipe tables and refill snack bins, but I sat in the back corner during meetings, quietly absorbing every word: fundraising, burn rate, onboarding, UI design, lean strategy. I wasn't part of the conversation. But I was preparing for one of my own. I saved enough to buy a scratched-up laptop from a pawn shop. It overheated every 15 minutes, but it turned on, which meant hope still had a pulse. I spent hours on free tutorials at the public library, teaching myself code one syntax error at a time. Some nights I forgot to eat until my stomach felt like it was chewing itself, but slowly, the thing forming on my screen started looking less like chaos and more like possibility. A year passed. Then another. Life didn't get easier. I just got stronger. I traded embarrassment for grit. I traded loneliness for discipline. I traded the girl they threw away for the woman I was becoming. My app launched on a Tuesday morning at 3:12 a.m. I hit publish with trembling fingers, whispering Grandma June's words under my breath. Make them eat those words. At first, I had 3 users, then 18, then 50. I celebrated each one in the dark with a cup of instant noodles like it was champagne. When the first investor emailed me, I reread his message 12 times before replying, not because I was unsure, but because I realized something fierce that night. I didn't need my family's permission to exist anymore. Success wasn't sudden. It was slow, uneven, filled with setbacks that left scars I can still feel. But the numbers climbed, the team grew, the product took shape in ways that made strangers believe in me, in a way my own father never had. And through it all, 8 years passed, with nothing from the Lane family. Silence became a habit, then a boundary, then a shield. I thought they would never speak to me again. Honestly, I preferred it that way. But the world has a strange sense of timing. The very morning my face appeared on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen since the night I walked into the storm. Clara Lane. My mother. Her message was only 6 words. Christmas Eve dinner, family only, important discussion. I stared at the screen, knowing exactly what those words meant, and what they always had meant. They didn't want me back. They just wanted something. And for the first time, I felt a new kind of calm inside me. Let them want. This time, I would be the one writing the ending. Success is supposed to feel loud, triumphant, the kind of moment that explodes into your life with trumpets and applause. But when the email from Forbes hit my inbox at 6:42 a.m., the apartment was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft click of the heater switching on. I was sitting at the edge of my bed, half-dressed, hair still damp from the rushed shower I'd taken, when my phone lit up with a subject line I had to read twice. Congratulations, Harper Lane. You've been selected for the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. For a second, I truly thought it was a mistake, a glitch, a scam someone forgot to disguise. I clicked it anyway, heart thudding against my ribs like it wanted to escape before I did. And there it was, my name in bold black letters. A 2-paragraph summary of the company I had built on a borrowed bike, in a laundromat, on a scratched-up pawn shop laptop. Words like valuation and market disruptor and record-breaking acquisition interest. Words no one in my family would have ever attached to me. My breath caught in my throat. I waited for the wave of pride, the rush of validation I had promised myself I would feel the day the world finally saw me. It didn't come. 8 years of silence has a way of changing the meaning of victory. It becomes quieter, more private, more like a wound closing than a trumpet sounding. I closed the laptop and stared out the window of my Austin high-rise. The sun was lifting itself over the skyline, spilling light across the glass towers, the cars crawling onto I-35, the city that had forced me to grow up or give up. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed, slow and steady, because after everything I had lived through, the absence of collapse was its own kind of celebration. I didn't know yet that my life was about to split in two. Before and after, silence and storm. My phone vibrated again, a second notification slicing through the quiet. I assumed it was reporters or founders or investors trying to get ahead of the wave, but when I glanced at the screen, my stomach tightened. One name, one number, one ghost, Clara Lane. My mother. I had removed her contact long ago, but I could never delete the shape of that number from my memory. It appeared now like a resurrected shadow, demanding to be acknowledged. The message was short. Christmas Eve dinner at 6:30. Family only. Important discussion. 6 words. 6 years of absence, disguised as an invitation. I read the message 3 times, each slower than the last. My chest did not tighten with joy or longing or hope. It tightened with recognition. Important discussion had always been code for the same thing. Something was wrong, something needed fixing, something required money. And here is what hit me with the force of cold water, the kind that wakes you, not shocks you. When a family breaks you and then suddenly remembers you, they never remember you for love, only for need. I put the phone down. The heater clicked off. Outside, a siren wailed once and faded into the sprawl of morning traffic. For the first time in a long time, I felt something like clarity spreading through me. Sharp, certain, steady. Because 9 months earlier, in a whispered phone call from her prepaid flip phone, Grandma June had told me the truth my family would rather die than admit. Lane Furnishings, the empire my grandfather built with sweat and stubborn grit, was collapsing. Stores closing, loans defaulting, banks tightening their grip like a hand around a throat. Interest rates had gutted the company. Inventory costs were drowning it, and the people who had once looked down on me were now standing knee-deep in sinking sand. She had told me not to do anything, not to interfere. I did not listen. That same night, I formed a Delaware LLC, then another, a quiet lattice of holding companies so opaque no one could see where they led. I hired a private financial investigator. I tracked every default notice, every credit facility, every loan on the brink of implosion. And slowly, methodically, piece by piece, I bought them. Their debt, their leverage, their future. While they slept in their warm Tennessee homes, I sat in my Austin apartment signing documents that shifted the ownership of their entire world into my hands. They buried me at 19. At 27, I was buying the shovel. Now, staring at the message from my mother, I understood what this invitation really meant. They thought they still held the right to summon me. They believed I would come trembling through their door, hungry for forgiveness, willing to patch every hole in the sinking ship they had built with pride and incompetence. But they had invited back someone they no longer recognized. Someone born in a laundromat at 2 in the morning when my last $5 were gone. Someone who had learned to code with blistered fingers and work 3 jobs while pretending she was fine. Someone who had survived 8 years of silence and turned it into a kind of armor no apology could penetrate. If they wanted a discussion, I would give them one. Just not the one they expected. My phone buzzed again. A second message from my mother. "We are so proud of you. We have a lot to talk about." Proud. The words scraped against my skin like sandpaper. They were proud the moment I became useful again. Proud the moment my name carried weight. Proud the moment they realized they needed the daughter they had declared dead. I stood, walked to the window, and pressed my palm against the cold glass. The city stretched out before me like a map of choices I had made entirely on my own. I whispered into the quiet. "You want a discussion? You are about to get one. And this time, it will be the last." I didn't respond to my mother's message. I didn't need to. The invitation had already told me everything I needed to know. But knowing something and understanding it are two different things. And it wasn't until I opened the file on my laptop, a file labeled Lane Funeral, because naming it anything else would have felt too generous, that I understood exactly how far they had fallen. 9 months earlier, on a night when the Texas heat clung to the walls and my air conditioner rattled like it was protesting my entire existence, Grandma June had called me. She never called outside her usual first Sunday ritual, so when the burner phone rang at 11:54 p.m., I answered before the first vibration ended. Her voice was soft. Too soft. "Harper, honey, there's something you should know." Her words came slowly, deliberately, like she was unwrapping a wound she'd kept bandaged for years. "Lane Furnishings is in trouble. Real trouble. The kind that doesn't come back." My breath stilled. I leaned against the kitchen counter, gripping the edge like it might hold me up. "Trouble how?" I asked, though part of me already knew. She exhaled, a fragile sound. "Your father let your uncle talk him into expansion. New stores, new warehouses, new loans. Interest rates rose, sales dropped. The banks want their money, and they don't have it." I closed my eyes. "How bad is it?" A pause. Then the number landed with the weight of a falling building. 15.6 million. I didn't speak for several seconds. That silence wasn't shock. It was recognition. The kind that forms in your stomach long before the truth reaches your ears. Grandma whispered, "I didn't tell you to fix it. I just thought you deserved to know before you heard it from the world." I thanked her, told her I loved her, and hung up. Then I sat on my couch in the dim glow of the kitchen, staring at the wall as if it held answers. But it didn't. The answers were mine to create. That night, I opened my laptop and began tracing every loan, every lien, every creditor tied to Lane Furnishings. Not out of love, not out of anger, out of clarity. If they had not destroyed me, I might have tried to save them. If they had not declared me dead, I might have reached out. But they had buried me. And when you bury someone and they crawl back out, they don't come back the same. I spent nights at my desk with tired eyes and cold coffee, building a lattice of holding companies that folded into each other like origami. 3 weeks later, the first loan changed hands. 2 months later, another. By the 7th month, nearly every dollar Lane Furnishings owed pointed back to a single name: mine. They had belonged to the Lane Empire. Now the Lane Empire belonged to me. So when my mother texted me on the morning the Forbes article went live, I already knew the reason. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted rescue. And here comes the hook, that truth you ignore, until life forces it into your hands. When a family only calls you back when they are drowning, they are not reaching for your hand. They are reaching for your lifeboat. By the time Christmas Eve approached, the plan wasn't a plan anymore. It was an inevitability. A slow tide that had been rising for 8 years, finally ready to break. I booked my flight home. Upgraded to a car that would turn heads. Packed a single suitcase lighter than the one I'd left home with, heavier with purpose. 2 nights before the flight, I sat at my dining table with the stack of documents my attorney had prepared. Debt assignments, lien transfers, default notices, signatures proving the entire sinking ship was tethered to me. I traced my finger over my own name, printed dozens of times across the pages. Harper Lane. The girl they buried. Now the owner of the shovel. Grandma June called the night before I left. She never said she was proud of me for what I had done. She didn't need to. I could hear it in her breath, a small inhale of hope she'd held for years. "Just be careful with your heart," she murmured. I promised her I would. It wasn't entirely true. The morning of my flight, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of my coat, and for a moment, I didn't recognize myself. Not in a dramatic way, more like seeing a childhood photo next to a current one, and realizing the person in between had hardened in ways no one warned you about. I wasn't going home to reclaim a seat at their table. I was going home to show them the table now belonged to me. And if you've ever had someone cut you out of their life, erase you, declare you unworthy, then you understand what I'm about to say. But I want to hear it from you. Drop a simple number 1 in the comments if you've ever had to rebuild yourself without the family who should have stood beside you. Because this next part, the dinner, the reveal, the reckoning, only makes sense if you know exactly what it feels like to walk back into the room that once broke you, and choose not to break again. I picked up my suitcase, turned off the lights, locked the door. It was time to go home, not as the daughter they discarded, but as the woman they never saw coming. The plane touched down in Nashville just after sunset, the sky a bruised purple fading into winter black. I stepped off the jet bridge with the same suitcase I'd carried out of my old life 8 years earlier, lighter now, but somehow heavier with everything I'd become. The air was colder than I remembered. Sharper, or maybe I was sharper. Outside the terminal, I slid behind the wheel of the black BMW I'd rented. I didn't choose it to impress them. I chose it because it represented something they never expected from the daughter they'd exiled. Arrival. As I drove toward the Lane estate, houses grew larger, driveways longer, holiday lights brighter. The same cul-de-sac I'd fled as a teenager came into view like a set frozen in time. Their house glowed with enough decorations to power a small town. Wreaths, ribbons, and strings of white lights wrapped around every window and pillar, as if the illusion of family could be stapled into place with twinkle bulbs. I parked behind my father's aging SUV. For a moment, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing slow, steady breaths. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel warmth. I felt something colder, cleaner, purpose. The front door swung open before I even reached the steps. "Harper," my mother said, her voice too bright, too stretched. "There you are." She smelled like perfume and desperation. She hugged me with the softness of a person who'd practiced affection in a mirror. My father appeared behind her in a blazer that fit tighter than it used to. His smile pulled at the corners of his face like old fabric. "Long time," he said, giving me the same two-pat shoulder tap he used on business associates he didn't actually trust. From the den, Logan looked up from his phone long enough to toss me a lazy nod. "Yo." 8 years of silence, and yo was all he had. Aunt Marjorie swept in next, sequin dress catching the firelight. Her eyes traveled from my coat to the BMW parked outside. "Well, look at you," she said, with a smile so thin it was practically transparent. "You clean up nicely." Before I could respond, someone else reached me. Grandma June. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her arms wrapped around me with a warmth I hadn't felt in almost a decade. Real, soft, steady. I held her tighter than I meant to, inhaling the familiar scent of lavender lotion and peppermint tea. "There you are," she whispered into my shoulder. "My girl." Her voice was the first true thing spoken that night. Inside, the house was all polished surfaces and curated holiday cheer. The smell of honeyed ham, cinnamon, and fresh pine mingled in the air. A string quartet played softly through the speakers, the same version of Silent Night they'd used every Christmas of my childhood. It all looked perfect. Perfect is what families build when they're hiding cracks. We moved through the motions, the fake warmth, the shallow questions, the careful compliments. My mother asked about my flight. My father asked if Texas weather was still insane. Logan made a comment about tech people playing ping pong all day. Aunt Marjorie kept circling me like a shark scented with blood, dropping sugar-coated barbs about how lucky I must feel. I played along, smiled where they expected smiles, laughed where they expected laughter, because tonight wasn't about reacting. Tonight was about revealing. Eventually, my mother clapped her hands together like a stage manager. "Dinner is ready." We moved to the dining room, a space so immaculate it felt more like a museum exhibit than a place where a family gathered. The table was set for 7. Gold-rimmed plates, crystal glasses, cloth napkins folded into shapes straight from a lifestyle magazine. And there, at the far end of the table, the powerless seat of my teenage years, sat a card with my name, written in cursive, Harper. My father gestured toward it as if it were an honor. We took our seats. The performance began. The first course arrived: roasted pear salad, candied walnuts, balsamic glaze arranged in elegant swirls. They talked about the neighborhood decorations, supply chain issues, how traffic had gotten worse near the mall. Not one word about 8 years of silence, not one word about the night they erased me, not one word about the new empire I'd built from the ashes of who they used to be. But that was fine, because this kind of silence speaks louder than truth. As the second course arrived, ham, mashed potatoes, green beans, the conversation thinned, tension thickening beneath it like undertow beneath gentle waves. My father stole glances at my face, then at my bag, then back again. My mother's smile twitched whenever she thought I wasn't looking. Something had shifted in the room. They could feel it. Not fear, not yet, but awareness. Awareness that the girl who'd left wasn't the woman who returned. When people treat you like nothing until they need you, they don't fear losing you. They fear meeting the version of you that survived without them. If you've ever come back stronger from a place they expected you to fall, hit the like button right now. Your strength deserves to be seen. My father cleared his throat. His hand trembled slightly as he set down his wine glass. "All right," he said, folding his hands. "Let's get to the reason we're all here." The room stilled. The performance was over. The real dinner was just beginning. My father's voice sliced through the candlelit room with the same force he'd used when he declared me dead 8 years earlier. Only this time, he needed something from the daughter he'd buried. He rested his elbows on the table, hands folded like a man about to deliver a verdict. Lane Furnishings is on the brink of collapse. There it was. No preamble, no apology, no acknowledgement of the silence, just the ugly truth wrapped in business language. My mother let out a small, shaky gasp, far too theatrical to be real. Marjorie pressed a hand to her necklace like she expected it to steady her pulse. Logan finally put his phone down. My father continued, "We expanded too fast. Interest rates soared. Inventory costs tripled. The banks have issued final notices. If we miss another payment," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I waited. Slowly, patiently, like someone watching a play she'd memorized long before opening night. Finally, Aunt Marjorie leaned forward, eyes sharp, voice trembling with desperation she tried to disguise as business strategy. "We need $3.1 million to refinance. Just enough to buy 6 months." And then, almost in unison, all their eyes turned to me. My mother reached across the table, laying her hand over mine with fingers that suddenly remembered how to be warm. "Sweetheart, you have become so successful. We are so proud of you. You could save us. You could save the family. Save the family. The same family that couldn't be bothered to say my name for 8 years. I didn't pull my hand away, but my face stayed still, unreadable. Logan shrugged, annoyed that the attention wasn't on him. $3 million isn't even a lot for you now, right? You were on Forbes. Just write the check." My grandmother, bless her heart, slid her foot against mine beneath the table. A small warning, a small assurance. "Take your time," her gesture said. "Do not let them rush you." My father leaned closer, his voice dropping into the tone he used in boardrooms. "We can put you on the board. Full voting rights, equity, legacy. You'll be part of the company again." Legacy. The word tasted like ash. I glanced around the table, watching their hope flicker like a fragile flame. My mother dabbed at her eyes. Marjorie swallowed hard. Logan rolled his eyes like the whole performance bored him. My father clenched and unclenched his jaw, waiting for my answer. The silence lingered a beat too long, thick as tar. Finally, I spoke. $3.1 million, I repeated softly. My father inhaled sharply, relief already forming on his face, like he believed he'd won. Interesting timing. The room froze. I placed my napkin down gently, smoothing the fabric as if preparing a table for something far bigger than dinner. When I lifted my gaze, my mother's smile faltered. My father's relief flickered. Logan looked confused. Marjorie went still as stone. I reached into my coat pocket and tapped one button on my phone. A crisp knock echoed from the foyer, too cold, too sharp to be one of them. My father looked toward the hallway, confused. "Who is that? We're not expecting." But I knew. I'd arranged everything down to the minute. Footsteps approached. Slow, steady, deliberate. Then he appeared in the entryway. Elias Ford. My attorney. Black overcoat dusted with snow. Metal briefcase in hand. Expression carved from granite. He looked like the kind of man who never entered a room unless it was to end something. "Good evening," he said, voice even. "I am counsel to Miss Harper Lane." My father nearly shot out of his chair. "What is this? Who told you could come into my house?" Elias didn't blink. He didn't need to. He unclasped the metal briefcase with 2 precise clicks that seemed to echo through the room. He laid down the first stack of documents. "These," he said, "are the assignments of your outstanding loans, purchased by a Delaware holding company." He placed a second stack. "These are the liens transferred over the past several months." Marjorie grabbed one, flipping pages with frantic, trembling fingers. "This is impossible. We would have been notified." Elias set a third packet in front of her certified mail receipts. "You were," he said calmly. All notices were acknowledged. My mother's face drained of color. Logan's jaw dropped open. My father's voice cracked with something between rage and disbelief. "What are you saying?" Elias folded his hands. "I am saying, Mr. Lane, that your daughter Miss Harper Lane now owns 100% of your outstanding debt, and as of today, you are in full default." Silence detonated across the table. My mother knocked over her wine glass. Red spread across the white tablecloth like a wound opening. My father's breathing turned ragged. Marjorie whispered, "No." Logan muttered, "You bought our debt? Why?" The answer hung unspoken in the air. "Because you buried me. Because you expected me to stay dead. Because you thought success made me soft." But I didn't say those words. Not yet. Elias closed the briefcase. "Foreclosure proceedings," he said, "can begin as early as tomorrow morning." My father slammed his palm on the table, rattling every plate. "This is betrayal." I leaned back slightly, studying the man who taught me betrayal before I even knew the word. "No," I said quietly. "This is business, and here is the hook one every viewer needs to sit with. When the family who destroyed you demands to be saved, what do you owe them? Drop your answer in the comments. Should I have saved them, or let the consequences speak?" My father's voice broke into a shout. "You will not destroy this family." But his mistake was simple. I didn't come to destroy them. I came to show them the truth. They destroyed themselves. For a long, stretched moment, no one breathed. My father's face was flushed red, jaw clenched so tight the tendons strained against his skin. My mother's mascara pooled beneath her eyes like cracked paint. Logan's phone lay forgotten beside his plate, screen glowing with a half-sent text he no longer had the presence of mind to finish. And Aunt Marjorie looked as if someone had sliced the ground out from under her heels. Elias stood calmly at the edge of the table, hands clasped behind his back, as if he were merely observing the weather, rather than detonating the Lane Empire in real time. I had imagined this moment for years, what it would feel like to watch the people who buried me realize they had mistaken my silence for weakness. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt quiet, like the stillness after a storm finally breaks open the sky. My father pushed himself up from his chair, eyes blazing. "You think you can walk in here with contracts and threats, and..." I held up a single hand. "Sit." It wasn't loud, it wasn't harsh, but something in my voice carried weight I hadn't possessed 8 years earlier. And he sat. My mother looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, not as the daughter she'd erased, but as something colder, something she had helped create. Elias placed one final folder on the center of the table, a slim black binder, leather, unassuming. But I watched the room shift the second it appeared. "What is that?" my mother whispered. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached forward and opened it with deliberate care. Inside lay a single cashier's check, a bright, immaculate rectangle against the dark leather. $400,000. My father blinked, confused. You're offering money?" "Not offering," I corrected gently. "Exchanging." Under the check sat a 15-page agreement. I slid it toward him, watching his hands tremble as he picked it up. His eyes darted across the title printed in bold: "Full and final release of all claims and rights to Lane Furnishings, its trademarks, assets, and any inheritance." My mother choked on a startled breath. "You want us to sign away everything?" "Yes." Marjorie's voice cracked. "You're buying us out of our own company?" "No," I said softly. I already bought the company. I'm buying you out of the illusion that you still own any part of it. Logan shook his head slowly, as if the words refused to arrange themselves into something his brain could accept. So we walk away? With what? Just this? He gestured toward the check, voice rising. 400,000? That is nothing. That is? Better than foreclosure, I said. Better than auctions. Better than walking out of here tonight with zero. My father slammed the agreement onto the table. This is extortion. I met his fury with calm. No, Dad. This is choice. Sign, and you each receive your portion of the buyout. Refuse, and foreclosure begins at 9 a.m. tomorrow. The stores, the house, everything. My mother's hand shook as she reached for my father's sleeve. Richard. Please. But he stared at me, eyes burning with the same fire he'd used to destroy me years ago. You would do this to your own family? The question hung in the air, brittle as glass. I leaned forward, voice steady, not cold, simply true. You are not my family. You made that clear the night you pronounced me dead. Silence swallowed the room whole. Grandma June, seated quietly beside me, touched my hand. Not guiding, not stopping, simply reminding me that I wasn't alone. Logan was the first to break. This is insane. Just sign it. We can still rebuild something with the money. Marjorie snapped. Rebuild what? She owns everything. We're lucky she's not throwing us out herself. My father looked decades older as he lowered himself back into his chair. His voice came out cracked, barely held together. You really want us gone? I shook my head. I don't want revenge. I want peace. And peace starts with truth. My mother wiped her eyes, smearing makeup onto her wrist. Harper, we can be a family again. Please, we can fix this. I looked at her not with anger, but with the kind of clarity that finally lets you stop hoping for things that will never be real. I'm not interested in repairing what never truly existed. Fear flickered behind her eyes. A recognition, a surrender. She reached for the pen with trembling fingers. Marjorie grabbed it next, breathing hard through her nose as she carved her name into the page. Logan signed with a muttered curse. My mother hesitated the longest, but, in the end, she signed. All that remained was my father. He stared at the pen, at the agreement, at me. Then he signed with a heavy, broken finality. Elias collected each page, notarized them with crisp efficiency, and slid the completed packet into a sealed envelope. It's done, he said. No one moved. No one spoke. If you were in my place, would you have given them the buyout? Or walked away and let the world take everything? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. As for me, I stood, closed the black folder, and whispered the only words that felt right. Merry Christmas. Then I turned toward the door. I didn't look back. The house was silent when I stepped away from the table. Not the silence of peace, the silence of consequences. Behind me, the Lane family, the people who once decided I was disposable, sat frozen in the wreckage of their own doing. The signed agreement lay in the center of the table like a gravestone, marking the end of the empire they believed they controlled. But I didn't turn back. My boots clicked softly across the hardwood floor, each step pulling me farther from the version of myself they once tried to bury. Grandma June rose slowly and followed me, her cane tapping lightly against the ground. Elias collected the documents with stoic precision, sealing the envelope that erased the last of the Lane legacy from their hands. At the foyer, Grandma paused. She looked back only once. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. They'll never understand what they lost. I slipped my arm around hers. They never tried to understand, I said, and together, we stepped out into the cold night air. Snow had begun to fall, the soft, drifting kind that feels like forgiveness when it lands on your skin. The Christmas lights wrapped around the Lane house flickered in the darkness, trying too hard to look festive, too desperate to appear untouched by what had just happened inside. But something fundamental had shifted. Not just in them, in me. Elias opened the passenger door for Grandma June, helping her into the seat as if she were royalty, which, in my story, she was. The only person whose love had stayed constant through every version of me. He closed her door gently, then moved to the driver's seat. I stood for a moment on the walkway, staring back at the mansion that once held every memory I thought I needed. Childhood laughter, birthdays, Sunday dinners, arguments, fears, punishments, expectations. It should have hurt to walk away. It didn't. Pain is heavy, clarity is light. I got into the car, and Elias pulled away from the curb. As we drove past the other homes in the cul-de-sac, I saw silhouettes in a few windows, curious neighbors, no doubt, watching the Lane family unravel 3 days before Christmas. Word would spread. It always does. But the truth was mine to tell now. Snow blurred the world outside into soft streaks of white and gold. The faint reflection of Grandma June's face shimmered in the window beside me, calm, relieved, somehow younger. She exhaled deeply, a sound like something she'd been holding for 40 years, finally letting go. "How do you feel, Harper?" she asked. I thought about it. Really thought. I expected triumph, or anger, or satisfaction, but all I felt was quiet. Like I'd finally stepped out of a storm I'd forgotten I'd been standing in. "I don't feel free," I said slowly. "I feel finished." Grandma nodded with understanding only someone who'd lived through her own losses could possess. "Sometimes, closure doesn't feel like victory," she said. "It feels like breathing again." We drove in silence for a few minutes, the good kind of silence, the kind that doesn't demand anything from you. Elias knew the way without needing directions. After all, he'd drawn up the paperwork for the condo months earlier. When we arrived, he parked beneath the soft glow of the streetlights. I helped Grandma June climb out, her hand resting on mine, not because she needed support but because she liked the connection. Inside, the condo smelled like cinnamon tea and fresh laundry. It was small, warm, lived in, the opposite of the mansion we had just left. A fireplace flickered softly, casting a gentle glow across the room. Grandma sank into her favorite recliner. I knelt beside her. "You did what you had to do," she said. I swallowed. "Did I though? Did I really have to?" She turned my chin toward her, eyes steady, voice firm. "They chose pride over you. They chose silence over love. They chose themselves every time. Tonight, you chose yourself." Her words settled in me like a stone dropping into still water. I looked around the condo, the tiny Christmas tree on the side table, the knitted blanket draped over the couch, the framed photo of me at 8 years old smiling with missing front teeth. "Home isn't always where you begin," Grandma said. "Sometimes it's where you finally stop running." I rested my head gently on her lap, something I hadn't done since I was a child. Her fingers combed through my hair, slow and soft. Elias cleared his throat quietly from the doorway. "Everything is finalized, Harper. They have no claims, no leverage, no path back." "Good," I said. "That chapter is closed." But as he turned to leave, Grandma spoke again, her voice low, but strong enough to shape the room. "Chapter's close," she said. "Books don't." Her words lingered long after the door clicked shut. And here is the hook, the question that tears people in half and fills comment sections with fire. When someone who destroyed you wants back into your life, do you ever owe them a second chance? Or is peace found only by walking away? Tell me what you believe. As for me, that night, in the warmth of my grandmother's living room, I learned the truth for myself. Closure isn't a moment. It's a choice, and I had finally made mine. The morning after Christmas Eve felt strangely quiet. Not the heavy quiet of dread but the lighter kind, the kind that follows a storm finally spending itself. For the first time in years, I woke up without bracing for impact. Grandma June was already in the kitchen, humming along to an old country song as she poured 2 mugs of cinnamon tea. Her voice had a softness that reminded me of childhood mornings, the kind where the world felt small enough to hold in your hands. "Morning," she said when I stepped into the room. "You look lighter." Maybe I was. Maybe handing someone their consequences feels like unclenching a fist you didn't know you'd been holding for 8 years. We sat at the little round table beside her window, the one that overlooked a courtyard filled with bare winter trees. She pushed a mug toward me. "So," she said with a smile tugging at her lips, "what comes next?" For the first time since I boarded that bus at 19, I didn't answer with fear or guesswork. I answered with certainty. We rebuild. And that's exactly what I did. Lane Furnishings officially became Lane Collective 3 weeks later. The first thing I did was visit the remaining employees, the ones who had stayed loyal even as the business crumbled. Some recognized me immediately, others whispered quietly among themselves, piecing together rumors into truth. "You're taking over?" They were scared, nervous, curious. But when I announced that wages were increasing, benefits were returning, and everyone who stuck through the chaos would receive equity, the fear dissolved. You should have seen their faces. It was like watching dehydrated plants bloom in real time. We tore down the outdated systems, closed the stores dragging the company under, invested in online expansion, hired fresh leadership people with vision, not pride. Within 9 months, we were profitable again. Not because I was a genius, not because revenge makes you sharper, but because I cared about the business more than the people who tried to weaponize it. Funny how that works. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with updates about my former family, whether I wanted them or not. Nashville is a small city when it comes to gossip, and an even smaller city when a dynasty falls. My mother moved out first, filed for divorce, took half the buyout money, and bought a condo in Florida close to the beach but far from her shame. Logan lasted about a month at a job selling used cars before he was fired for showing up late. Last I heard, he delivered takeout and complained loudly on social media about fake success stories. Marjorie's real estate license was suspended after multiple ethics complaints from vendors she'd bullied for years. The most poetic detail? She now worked at a department store selling handbags she used to brag about buying full price. And my father moved into a one-bedroom rental outside the city. The lane name that once filled him with pride now felt like a weight he couldn't lift. Someone told me they saw him at the grocery store, comparing prices on generic cereal, looking smaller than anyone had ever seen him. But here's the strange thing. I didn't feel satisfied. Watching them face consequences wasn't victory. It was balance. Life simply leveled the scale they had tipped. One evening, months after the company stabilized, I stopped by Grandma's condo with takeout and a stack of new photos of the remodeled stores. She sat in her recliner wrapped in the soft cashmere blanket I'd given her, eyes bright as she listened to everything I'd rebuilt. She reached over and patted my hand. "You didn't save them, Harper. You saved yourself." I swallowed the knot forming in my throat. "I didn't do this to hurt them." "I know, and that's why you won." We sat in her warm living room, feet tucked under blankets, soft music playing in the background. For the first time in my life, success didn't feel like something I had to prove. It just felt earned. And here is the hook, the one that always ignites the comments. Some people think I was too harsh. Others think I was too kind. So tell me this. If the family who buried you suddenly needed saving, what would you do? A. Save them. B. Let the consequences do the teaching. C. Offer them a coupon to therapy and walk away. Drop your letter in the comments, because honestly, I want to see which team you're on. I laughed a little as I said it to myself. Humor made the heaviness easier to carry. Grandma looked over, puzzled. "What's funny?" "Just thinking about how life can turn out," I said. She smiled knowingly. "Life doesn't turn out, sweetheart. We turn it." And that night, as I stood on her balcony, overlooking the quiet street below, I realized something simple. Revenge hadn't rebuilt me. Love had. Work had. Time had. And the strength to walk away had. But I'll admit one thing. Showing them exactly who they underestimated, that was the sweetest part. A year can change everything. But sometimes it's the quiet moments, not the victories, not the headlines that show you just how far you've come. The next Christmas Eve arrived with soft snow drifting down like feathers shaken loose from the sky. The world outside Grandma June's condo looked peaceful in a way my childhood never had. Streetlights glowed against the white, casting long, gentle shadows. The air felt cold, but not unfriendly, like winter had finally learned how to be soft. I pulled into the driveway with a small Fraser fur strapped to the top of my car and 2 mugs of hot cocoa tucked carefully in a carrier. Peppermint, the way Grandma liked it, not too sweet, just enough bite to feel nostalgic. When she opened the door, she was wearing red plaid pajamas and the fuzzy socks I'd bought her last winter. Her smile was wider than anything I'd seen in years. "There's my girl," she said, pulling me into a hug that felt like home, not the place, not the past, but the person. Inside, the condo glowed with warm lamplight and the soft crackling of a fireplace app on her TV. A small wreath hung above the mantel, simple, quiet, real. No staged photo-ready decor, no gold chandeliers, no forced perfection, just peace. We decorated the tree slowly, intentionally. 12 ornaments, 1 for each year I'd been gone, and 1 extra for the year I found my way back to myself. Some were new, some were old, One was a paper star I'd made at age 7, edges bent and coloring faded. Grandma had kept it all these years. She hung it last, pressing her hand to her heart. "Your little spark never went out," she said softly. Even when they tried to smother it, emotion tightened my throat, but in a good way, the kind of ache that lets you know you're alive. Afterward, we settled onto the couch with our Coco. Bing Crosby crooned softly from the record player in the corner. Snow drifted outside the window in slow spirals. It felt like the world had finally stopped spinning fast enough for me to breathe. Grandma reached beside her and pulled out a small wrapped box. "For you," I blinked. "Grandma, you didn't need to." "Open it," she insisted, eyes twinkling. Inside was a framed piece of paper, thin, worn, folded a dozen times. It took me a moment to recognize it. It was the note she had slipped into my coat pocket the night my family cast me out. Her phone number written in shaky blue ink. 3 words written beneath it. "Make them eat those words." My throat constricted. "You kept this?" I whispered. She smiled, warm and steady. "I kept the faith, Harper. The paper just came along for the ride." I laughed softly, brushing a thumb over the glass. This night, this warmth, this simple room, it felt like something I'd been chasing without knowing it. For years I thought revenge would be the moment I finally felt whole. But sitting there with Grandma, Coco warming my hands, I realized something different. Revenge wasn't the ending. Healing was. I leaned back, letting the quiet settle around us. "You think they'll ever try to come back into my life?" I asked. Grandma sipped her cocoa. "People like that always circle back when they think there's something left to take." I nodded. She was right. But for the first time in years, the thought didn't scare me. It didn't weigh on me. It didn't matter. I had already chosen the life I wanted, and they weren't in it. We sat in comfortable silence for a long while. The fire crackled softly. The snow fell in slow drifting lines. Every detail felt like a final page gently turning. Then Grandma said something I will never forget. "Real family stays when you have nothing left to give. Not wealth, not status, not power. Just you." She reached for my hand, squeezing lightly. "And sweetheart, you finally gave yourself back to yourself." A lump formed in my throat, and I let it sit there, not fighting it. Peace doesn't always come quietly. Sometimes it arrives with tears you didn't expect. I looked at her, the only person who stood by me before the success, before the headlines, before the world finally paid attention. Everything good in my life started with her love. Outside, a new snowfall began. Inside, warmth gathered around us like a promise kept. And here's the hook, the question that splits every audience in half. Is the sweetest revenge rebuilding your life, or refusing to let the people who broke you ever break you again? Tell me what you think. And if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from the ground up, or carry your own heart until it learned to beat again, make sure you subscribe, because the stories coming next, they're for people just like you. Grandma clinked her mug against mine. "To new beginnings," she said. "To peace," I whispered back, and for the first time in my entire life, Christmas felt exactly like it was supposed to.